What's up, bookworms? Welcome to episode 113 of the Cantina Book Club podcast, where readers can find interviews with authors of all genres. I'm Megan, self proclaimed content queen, here to bring you insights from the authors themselves. Each week features a Cantina conversation with an author. Sometimes they're returning guests, sometimes it's someone new. Please be sure to hit that subscribe button so that you never miss out on an episode. And feel free to browse through existing episodes so that you can catch a previous interview about a book that you finished. Today's episode features a chat with Grace Helena Walz. We're talking about her book, Good Hair Days. That book just came out last week, so hopefully you've had time to pick it up and read it. Some spoilers do pop up in these conversations, but the episode is more enjoyable if you've read the book, which is why I suggest that you save this episode to your playlist and then finish the book, Good Hair Days. The interview will be here when you're ready. I had such a fun time chatting with Grace about her writing journey as it is for her releasing two books, published books back to back a little bit, and just getting into her character relationships. And of course, I had a bone to pick with her about making me feel so emotional towards the end of the book. So, just a heads up that I often use adult language to express my feelings towards these authors and their work, as you will hear in today's episode for sure. Whether the characters need to get their shit together or I am literally saying what the fuck to Grace for making me feel things. Just please be mindful around listening ears. Books coming out this week of November 18th. Your Next Life is Now by Namrata Patel. I haven't picked it up yet as of this recording, but I'm really excited. And I'm excited to welcome Namrata back to the show for another great conversation chatting about her book. And that episode will be posted next week. So be sure to pick up the book this week and tune in next week when I chat with Namrata. And now a word from Crystal Hope, founder of the Book Podcast Connection.
Hello, listeners. My name is Crystal Hope. I am the host of Must Love Books podcast and the organizer of the Book Podcast Connection. The BPC is a networking group of over 100 book-related podcasts, from fantasy to romance to horror and every genre in between. There are even podcasts for authors and writers. Check us out on Instagram at Book Podcast Connection or at www.bookpodcastconnection.com and discover your next bookish obsession.
Now, I know I'm biased, but I definitely recommend you all check out the amazing plethora of bookish podcasts and subscribe if you are looking to get more out of your reading lists. Without further ado, get ready, grab your favorite drink. Here is Grace Helena Walz. Today we've got Grace Helena Walz. We're talking about her book, Good Hair Days, that comes out on November 11th. Grace, thanks so much for meeting with me today. I finished this book pretty quickly. I wanted to find out what happened. I was really invested in your characters, and I have a bone to pick with you for making me feel feelings. Like, I did not expect to get so emotional towards those very hitting points, but you did it. So I'm like excited to talk a little bit more about it today.
Yeah, me too. And thank you so much for having me. I'm glad that the book pulled on those heartstrings. It was supposed to. Mission
Yeah.
accomplished.
Mission accomplished. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So to get started, can you provide like a summary of the book so that people can follow along with the conversation?
Sure, absolutely. So, Good Hair Days is a story about two sisters who have to team up with their maternal aunts to save their struggling family beauty shop. It's in a small southern town. It's like a hole in the wall with Dolly Parton memorabilia. And so, younger sister gets the shop into a little bit of hot water by way of a renovation gone wrong. And so, older sister Georgia, who is the responsible one and the main character in the story, returns home to help save the shop, get it out of trouble. And then when her younger sister Junie receives a life-altering medical diagnosis, the group of women have to really pull together and tell the truth and dig deep and really rely on the deep love between them.
Yeah, lots of warm, fuzzy feelings and some heartbreak sprinkled in here and there. But yeah, it was a lot of character relationships and character growth, and it was very character driven and also a lot of fun, just like a lot of fun times. I think it'd be so fun to be part of their family. It's
Yeah,
just even though that's a lot of pressure and we could get into it. Yeah.
yeah. And there's such a deep love between them, but they're also all very flawed and they're realistic and they're down to earth, but they have a good time. And one kind of thing that was important for me to make sure that I kept throughout the book is that even though they start out they're having a hard time and things get worse as the book goes on, as Junie gets sick, but that they still have this great ability to find joy in life and to find the kind of silver linings and make a good time out of something that's very, not necessarily a good time out of everything that's challenging, but find the enjoyable parts in it, and that their love for each other kind of, it equips them to really deal with challenging situations. And they're sassy and they're southern, and they're, the way that they talk to each other is very comfortable and relaxed and casual, and I wanted to be part of it too. That was my hope, that as a reader you would experience that as well.
Yeah, I that came through the page for sure, that you had fun and that you put your like a little bit of yourself and what you want the reader to get out of it. Like you want to feel those things and you want the reader to feel those things. So that definitely came off in your writing. So what can we I want to go into your background a little bit, your previous titles that you've published, maybe how did this so maybe like a two-parter of a question. So like how did your background, either professional or personal, what led you to bring Good Hair Days into the world? And then maybe how did this book, either the writing or the release of it, getting it published, how did that compare to like your previous works that you've done?
Yeah. So actually, professionally, I was a social worker before I was a writer. So before I had children, I was a social worker and I worked in mental health primarily. I was adjacent to the foster care system. And then I also did some crisis mental health work as well. And yeah, so light and fluffy. But it was incredible work that really taught me a lot about humanity, and it taught me a lot about people and their resilience and the resilience of humans in general, and this ability that some of the folks that I had the privilege of meeting and learning about their lives, that they were able to endure not only really difficult things, but they were, much like the characters in this book, they were able to find joy and to still live life to its fullest regardless of their circumstances. Really, a lot of social work, or my social work job, was listening to people and hearing their stories and coming to understand what all the parts of their story is, what was their past and what's their present, and what are all the components that go into their life. And so that really informs how I write books and how I build characters, that I want them to have thorough backstories that really inform who they are, or that there are things that have happened along the way. And especially in Good Hair Days, that's the case. There's this kind of big backstory built in of, so when the story opens, they're the two sisters, Georgia, who's the older responsible sister, and Junie, who's the younger, just very dreamy and much more young at heart and joyful. She sometimes rushes in, as with the beauty shop, and getting it torn up before she knows that they can't necessarily put it together as planned, put it back together as planned. But when the story opens, their mother is deceased. So she has passed from the cancer that ultimately Junie is diagnosed with. And so their mother, in her absence, she also leaves behind a lot of questions, because there's this family naming tradition of in the family, every firstborn daughter is named June, and every June runs the beauty shop. She gets the keys to the shop. And Georgia is a firstborn daughter, and she doesn't get the name. And the story that's told from their aunts is that their mother wanted more for her. She wanted her to go out and live a bigger life and do more, and not be chained to this small town and this very hole in the wall shop. And really, George is dealing with the fact that that's not what she wants, but she also wants to live up to her mother's expectations, and she wants to make her family proud. So that's a component. I've gotten a little bit off track with the original question, but back to the question. I was a social worker professionally.
Go for it. Yes.
I was a social worker professionally. And then when I had my children, it was really just a job that the type of mental health work I was doing was so intense that I didn't feel like I could do that at the same time as having a young newborn. I stayed home for a while with my kids, and that's when I started writing, because I had always been a reader. And years later, my debut was published. It was Southern by Design is what it's called, and that came out actually just back in February. So Good Hair Days is my second book, and it's coming out exactly 9 months after the first. So I'm calling them my Irish twins books because they are only, and to the date, 9 months apart. And so Good Hair Days has been, I'm not sure if it's been the like traditional sophomore novel kind of experience, just because it has been soon after my debut that the whole book, the editorial work for this book was done before Southern by Design even came out. So it was an unusual situation to be
Mm.
in. And this time, at least, I feel more prepared. I've done it once already. And so there haven't been as many surprises. I think this time I'm getting more opportunities to do things like this, to come on and chat with you. And it's just it seems like with each book, there's you're more, and things don't feel quite as daunting because you know that you've done it before and you survived, you made it through. And so, yeah, that's how we got here.
So when writing wise, Southern by Design, like the difference between that and Good Hair Days, were you working did you I'm just curious about the timeline because that seems like you're right. That's really close. And were you writing them around the same time? Did you finish one and then people were on your team were like, yeah, go start another one, blah blah blah. Like how I want to explore how that went for you.
Yeah, Southern by Design was because everything in publishing moves so slow until it doesn't. And then it's like, now, now, now. But I wrote Southern
Yeah.
by Design and I I wanted to find an agent. I didn't have an agent so that was the book that I wrote the query for and went out and subbed to multiple agents just into their slush pile. And I ended up, I wish I'm so bad with timelines because my memory seems to go back and revise history. But of course, it took a while to get an agent. It was in no way, it was not one of those cases where it was like, oh, off the bat, somebody's in my inbox the next day saying, oh, I want to represent you. So there was time there. And in fact, my agent that I got sent me an R&R, so a revise and resubmit. And so I even revised Southern by Design before she signed me. And so there was that time. And then once I got my agent, we did some more revisions and then we went on submission. And so there are months of gaps of time in here. So I really took the advice that people tend to give of while you're waiting, just start working on your next thing, write the next thing. And I had this idea for this family run hair salon, Two Sisters, and I ran with it. What the book is now is very different than the first drafts of it.
Mm.
It's evolved a lot, but I was writing the early drafts of it while before I even knew if I was going to we were even going to sell Southern by Design. So I was fortunate that I was in a position that when Southern by Design sold, that they offered me a 2-book deal. So that deal was a 2-book. So we knew going in there would be a second book. And my editor liked the idea of Good Hair Days. And so she said, yeah, go ahead and we can submit that and have that be your second book. I am a fairly quick writer. So I'm able to turn things around on the faster side, but it was definitely to my advantage to have had all of that time where I'm waiting and we don't know, and is somebody going to pick it up or is it not going to get picked up? Because so many great books go on submission and don't get picked up. That's the nature of the business as well. That I was ahead of the game there. And so when the one after Southern by Design was complete, and I said, hey, I've got this book that I wrote, I was glad that they wanted to move forward with that one. And the quick timing was really just on the publisher's side too, and it just all came together. It worked out.
That's great. No, but I feel like that's so common where you're absolutely right. One, whereas like you hear everything's exciting and it's happening so quickly and then you don't hear anything for a really long time. And then
Yeah.
another thing is where the first draft the point of a first draft is to just be a first draft. Just get it out, and it is your baby. You know that you're going to have to go back to the drawing board on some components of it, certain elements, and but that's why there are more cooks in the kitchen when you go the traditional publishing route, but then you have more resources at your disposal to rely on their expertise and to try to like they wanna see you succeed because 'cause they're a part of your team, essentially, and what's so common, but I think that's so fun that you were like, that you were encouraged to just go ahead and whatever your next idea is, go sit back at your desk and see what comes of it. Because that I imagine that was like you said, like, that was like a quick run through of your experience, like, of an author experience, but I think that's yeah, it was definitely a unique position for you to be in, to just be like, "No, let's go for it and we'll go like full steam ahead."
Yeah, and I think it helps too that my editor and I have very similar taste in books, and I think what she and I like is very similar, that that's helpful as well when you really mesh with your editor and you have the same favorite things in a book. That and obviously she has a wide range and she's not just one thing, but she and I, we speak the same language in books, so that's really helpful. And you're right, and my publisher has been extremely supportive as well, and I've felt, especially with things like cover art, you hear a lot of stories from authors in traditional publishing of there are sometimes that they're shown a cover and they say, "Oh my gosh, I hate it." And they say, "Too bad." And that's the complete opposite of which ultimately like the publishers do have the final say. And that's in, I think, most standard contracts is that they do get the final say. But I've had a really positive experience thus far. So I count myself as lucky for that.
Yeah, because like, I understand where they're coming from, where it's maybe it doesn't match the vibe, or maybe you're just not feeling it, but at the end of the day, there's other books that are gonna be you don't wanna look at it as competition, but it's the shelf space and how it's presented and what's gonna be on display, what's gonna catch for your genre, what's gonna catch that eye, and so, no, I have spoken with a lot of authors who you're right, they do have that experience where they're like, "Oh, this is great, I love it, I don't even have to fight about it." As opposed to people who are like, "Oh, like, just had to deal with it," or just had to accept where it was going. Because yeah, and plus I think, like, there are the publishing world, it's just changed. It's changed so much, like, even so recently, I feel like a lot of that change has happened really quickly, more recently versus someone who's been writing for 20, 30 years. Um, it's much different like it was 30 years ago, but it's also much different than it was like 5 or 7 years ago. Not just with trad publishing, but I think that the boom of indie and self-publishing too has totally changed the game. But you're absolutely right. I wanna comment on having an editor who does into it. They see what you're going for and they speaking your language. They see for that genre, oh, because if they're a reader of that genre, if they're a fan of that genre, they're like, yeah, they have that perspective versus someone who like is only into suspense or thriller. And if they're editing your book, they might be missing out on some of that, I don't know, pacing or those unique storytelling techniques that are don't transcend from one genre to the next. I'm glad that that's really cool. I think that was so important for that. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think I'm always trying to keep up on what's changing and what's new in publishing, and it's so exciting to see a lot of indie authors having massive success and those groups. Even though I haven't published anything independently at this point, I love hearing what's happening in those communities and reading those books too. And but you're right, publishing is just so rapidly evolving, and even how people are spreading the word about books and how are people finding out about books. It's just as the internet and social media and all of these things are changing and evolving. Like when it was, oh, is TikTok going away? And everyone's freaking out, however many months ago that was, that it was like, does this mean the end of
Yeah.
book talk? Which has become this massive force in selling books, that it really is it's a very changing business to be in. And I think we're all just trying to do our best.
No, 100%. Even at me as like someone who just wants to help authors get their word out and just, "Hey, let's talk about it." And I do all sorts of genres too. Even for me, I guess as a content creator, it's hard. Like I'm still trying to keep up and there's just so much out there. It's just the challenges and the outreach and the stupid algorithms and you're just trying to it does feel like catch up a lot. And then maybe once you've got the hang of it, then it's just, oh, something else is changing or I missed something else. And so I'm right there with you. Even as like someone like from the other side of it, I'm right there with you.
Yeah. We're constantly all trying to wear different hats too, because you're the writer, but you also have to be decent on social media. And do you have a newsletter? And there's all these things. In the same way that with content creation, there's so much that goes into it. Even when I try to like make a reel on Instagram, it's so time consuming that every time I'm doing it, I'm like, there's a reason this is a job. There's a reason people do this for a living because it takes not only time, but skill and knowledge and talent to be able to put something together that we just scroll by for and watch for a couple seconds and we laugh and then we scroll
Yes.
on. It takes a lot more than 15 seconds to put that all together.
Absolutely. Oh my god. That's why I do a lot of scheduling. I'm getting better about it, but I try to schedule as much as possible. So I'm like, okay, I could just take like maybe a day or a few hours out of my day to do a bunch and then just like schedule posts.
Mhm.
So then it looks like I'm posting like multiple times a day, but I'm just giving myself a break for a few weeks because I've got the content scheduled out. But you're absolutely right. It's like these people they commit to the bit, they like either they have it down where their performances and their scripts because even like me just having a one-on-one conversation, we're just keeping it casual, but for some of these people who they're acting out scripts so you could tell that they're just speaking concisely and accurately or they've got it down or they practiced it and I'm like there's a reason why some people they just have those skills and they're maybe a little bit more successful or they come off across as more prepared and more natural and more energized, like they have more energy for it versus me where I'm like after the fact, where I'm like, okay, like I could pick apart content here and there and then do it and then look at the results later and see, okay, how many eyes got on this? How many people seem to like it? And if I'm doing collabs, like if I tag with authors in it, and I'm like, okay, which one was a hit amongst their readers or how were they discovered? Things like that. So you're right. There's a whole I have a feeling like I don't want to say like theater people, but a lot of people who have those similar qualities of like just presenting themselves in front of even if it's just an online community, just amongst eyes and amongst ears and they have that certain something where they can turn it on, turn it off or they have some sort of system down where even after they turn it on, they can quickly cut, edit, add music, add text, and boom, it's like an amazing reel that is just getting so many eyes on it. It's hard. It's
Yeah.
hard. I feel you.
I know, and it's for those of us who are not naturals on camera, I love these casual conversations too, because I can talk about books forever. I can talk about publishing and books and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Else come home, but you ask me to recite something when a camera's on and say the right thing at the right time, and I'm going to need at least 15 takes. And then by the time we get the 15th take, there's going to be like
Yeah.
a look on my face because I'm going to be like, oh my goodness, I hope this one, I say the right thing, or I don't forget to say this, or I'm not holding the book up. Yeah. The perils of situation.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a struggle. It's a struggle to stay relevant and entertaining and all of that in this and that we're at the mercy of our technology and how society reacts to it. I want to talk about any kind of research involved. I like asking authors about any research, like whether it was something that you weren't familiar with or just wanting to get a little bit more authenticity, even if it was something silly that
Mhm.
you went down a rabbit hole or something like you were just super fascinated by or were surprised to learn, anything like that?
Yeah. So I didn't do a ton of research, but I definitely use things like Pinterest or Google image searches for certain things. For the Dolly Parton stuff too, I wanted to make sure I had like my history on her. Not that there's history included on her in the book, but that as a reader, there are some times that I read books that I'm like, oh, I can tell that the author did a lot of research on this and they like wanted to include the research because sometimes it reads like why are there all these details in here? Which I think with certain you expect there to be a lot of that. So I tried not to put too much in. I think the main thing that I did research for this book was the medical stuff, just because I wanted to make sure that the things I was saying, and I didn't get down into like too many nitty-gritty details. Like it was, but I wanted to make sure that things that I was saying were actually medically possible and that it wasn't something that
Mhm.
a certain collection of folks would read and be like, "Oh, this is completely inaccurate. There's no way this would be possible." Although a lot of times that stuff does come up. If you get it wrong, the copy editors they're so amazing. They know so much and they have such eagle eyes for details and little, "Oh, you said this was this on this page." And, "Oh, if you follow the timeline." That was one thing on Southern by Design that I remember from copy edits, was that I had a certain business that was open, like the main office. I think it was a landscaping business. I had the main office open, but my copy editor was like, "Oh, if you follow this timeline, this would have been a Sunday, and this wouldn't be like a type of office that's typically open on a Sunday." And so like I had to go back and rework the timeline. And obviously there are all different types of readers. There are readers that will read for those mistakes and will read for those type of details. And if you get it wrong, they will nail you for it. I am the type of reader that I just trust the author. Like I would trust them with my life if I'm reading this book. Like I am not looking for any holes. I'm not looking to find mistakes. I'm just like, take me where we're going with this story. I am here for the ride. So thank goodness writers that like can keep you honest on that. One thing, the timeline thing is something I always get on the copy editing. I do my best with it, but as a writer, I'm like, maybe 3 or 4 days have passed, and my copy editors, "No, you need to pick like a time. Like it has to be 3 or 4 days. Like
Yeah.
you have to pick one and commit to it." And so in my mind, I'm like, "Yeah, but like can't time be a little bit fluid?" And they're like, "No, it can't. It has to actually like it's not an alternate universe you're in, Grace. Like this is like the real world." So yes, like going back to what you said earlier about having the publishing team on your side, like that's a perfect example of a time that it's just so valuable to have those people on your side who have these skills that you don't have, because it really takes all different folks getting involved to get a book out. And for the indie folks, they are maybe hiring those people themselves, and sometimes they have to double as different people. And the nice part about being a traditionally published is that you do have those people there that you can rely on. And I know that indie books are also, they have their editors too, who are just as skilled. But yes, the editors, God bless them, because they keep us from, like I said to my editor, she had caught some things in Good Hair Days. At this point, I can't remember what exactly it was, but I remember emailing her and being like, "I feel like you're the girl in the bathroom that's telling me I have toilet paper stuck to my shoe before I'm like walking back out into the restaurant or the bar or whatever it is." Like that person who's doing you a solid of, you don't want to put this out because you have blind spots and you write things and like maybe you get excited and you get into the story and the characters, and it's having somebody else who can look at the story from like a more neutral position and say, "Oh, this is not reading the right way," or "This is coming off as not great." That for me, sometimes that comes as a surprise because that's not what I'm intending for the story for the feeling to translate at that point. That having somebody to do that for you is just so valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that because you're absolutely right. Like there's different types of readers out there, and it's really good that there are readers who have the eagle eye for that stuff or who just they want their brain just catches it, or even like for a casual reader who has that ability. Because I the more I learn about the reading and the book community, I see those, it just reminds me of those memes of people who are like, oh, you'll see an account who's like noticing all these themes and like the deep diving, and they're noticing like hints and foreshadowing and stuff, and they're like, I'm just reading for the vibes. Your brain just doesn't go there. People who love, they live for that stuff. Ooh, I want something that's going to challenge me, that's gonna get me thinking and expand my brain. And then there are other people who are like, I'm just here for a good time.
Mhm.
I'm here for to not make my brain do that stuff. Or it's so helpful to have people on your team who have those skills. Cause I'm sure you're focused on just so many other things that
Mhm.
contribute to the big picture. And so it's super important to have people who are gonna be like, "No, pick 3 or 4 days aside," 'cause it does, like it's gonna trickle at some point.
Yeah. And it is you're right. It's so cool to meet and talk to readers also of different like styles because they're like talking to book clubs is one of like my favorite things to do when the folks who've already obviously meeting any readers is fabulous, but talking to people who have read the book, like I have been just so impressed by people's insights and their thoughts and kind of the things that they have said and brought to these discussions that it's even made me think, oh my gosh, I'm like not a very good reader. I'm not as attentive as so many of these people because I read for the enjoyment of it. I am a reader who reads to escape and I'm there for the feelings. Like I will always remember how a book made me feel after I shut it. And I will know the experience of it. But as far as like details and plot and like names and unless it's like a very obvious location, the details slip away very quickly for me. But I will always remember the feelings and what the experience felt like for me from a book. And so it's so cool, especially when people do have that eagle eye or like that really deep kind of being able to tease out those themes. And it's just another example of how cool books are and how everybody that reads the same book is going to have a slightly different experience. That it's going to be a different picture in their mind. And it's just so cool.
I agree 100%. It's because yeah, I don't feel so don't reading is such an intimate act, it's such a personal act. So please don't like let what other people pick up on make you feel like, "Oh god, I'm a bad reader." No, cuz I've had to go through that little phase myself, but mostly like with watching like my husband and I after the kids go to bed, we like have our shows that we catch up on or movies that are like, "Oh, is it free now?" Or like just TV shows that we could even be something as simple as contemporary, like Shrinking on Apple or like Ted Lasso. Are some of those really good shows, or it could be something as more expansive as like Marvel, like that whole interconnected, or even Game of Thrones or the House of the Dragon, some of those more like epic where there's lots of connections and foreshadowing, whatever levels there are, or even like a movie that's like a standalone. And my husband, he's one to pick up on things like foreshadowing, or he predicts things where oh, it's the sister, or oh, he's going to end up accidentally swapping out these two documents. He like will call it out. And I'm just looking over it. I'm like, go join a writer's room or like a focus group or something, because if this is so predictable, and I'm not even mad about it. I've already accepted. I think this is my consumer experience and that's your consumer experience. And so I think it's just for me, myself, and it's just fine because I don't always pick up on the things, but that's that's a specific and unique experience to myself. And then
Yeah.
it like that adds to the process, that adds to your progress as a reader, where you're like, oh shit, you're like, I didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
But then there were some books where I did see it coming. I just wanted that confirmation. I'm sitting there and I'm like, I knew it.
Yeah.
Like, so it could go either way. So
Yeah.
don't like, because I'm right there with you. Some things I'm just like, right over my head, or I just didn't even look. But that's what I think was, like you said, it's so cool to connect with other readers and like book clubs and other bookish communities and other podcasts like this where there's people either discussing it or just interviewing the authors themselves. Like I'm right there with you. Don't worry. Do not worry. But that's why you're drawn to women's fiction or like contemporary southern fiction, right? You know what you like and what you're good at.
Yeah.
And if more experienced you get, maybe you might want to venture out later to, if you want to try your hand on some other, because I think we're all a sucker for romance. I don't care what anybody says. We eat that shit up. I loved the kind of like little stint of like fake dating slash like hiding or pretending, even though Junie was like teasing Eddie.
Yeah.
We're gonna come back to that later. Like she's teasing him about it. She's like, bruh. Like, but then she has to still put on a facade, and then eventually, even while the aunts are like, I don't like how close they're getting, and Junie's, "Yeah."
Yeah,
Like, it's just 'cause she's is there's a couple layers there, but that's maybe you might I really liked what you did with some of the romance elements there because it wasn't it wasn't distracting, but it gave us, like, a little taste of yeah, in women's fiction, I feel like you gotta have a little something in there
yeah,
just to make that human connection, right? It's another way to connect to readers and another way to kinda show multiple dimensions of a certain characters where it's like their backgrounds with each other, their history with each other, and then how is that going to reconnect? Like fake dating slash second chance slash, okay, once that's settled, let's get back to the bigger picture here. And so it just adds to the story for sure. So I just thought that was so funny because I even hear in my notes, I'm like, wait, what? I'm like, wait, Junie, what are you doing?
yeah. And that was one of the things that I got feedback on from my editor because I was like, "Oh, obviously, like this would be so funny and like cute that there's this situation where like Georgia thinks that maybe her sister's dating her ex and but she's not. But then there's this like weird, is there a love triangle kind of thing?" And she was like, "Yeah, we need to like iron some of these details out." She was like, "Because some of this is reading like a little weird." And so that was something, but I love including the romance in the women's fiction. And you're right. Like for me, in women's fiction, I think the romance component can be just such like a fun and kind of hopeful piece as well, like especially if a lot of the conflict and the tension is coming from other parts of their life, that the romance can be a place to have fun and that lightness. And like you're saying, like you have these kind of interludes that then can lighten the tone a little bit, that then when you come back to some of the harder stuff that you don't wear the reader out too much, because even if we know we're reading a heavier book that may have some like more serious themes, we still don't want to be battered over the head with it. You want enough lightness that like even my husband and I were talking about, he and I too watch after our kids are in bed, we watch shows together, just like you said that you do. And there's like multiple shows that we've tried that I'm like, it's too intense. There's no like breathing room. But like at the end of the day, I'm like, I'm okay to do some intense, but you got to back off for a little bit and let me catch my breath. And even just last night, we were talking about a
Yeah.
show that we were like, we can't keep watching this. It's just too intense. It's at a 10, like all the time. And I think there's some trend towards that in media where people want things to be shocking and always we're in this attention economy right now where people are not so much bookish community because those folks are actually reading a whole book, whatever format it is that they're using. But we do live in a world where people's attention spans are getting shorter and shorter. And so there is maybe this push in media to constantly be doing something shocking or extreme so that you get that attention. And what you're doing is the thing that somebody's looking at and coming back to. But for me, at least, and I think probably a lot of most readers too, that kind of ebb and flow of tense release is more manageable than just, and maybe that varies from genre to genre. I tend to read women's fiction, I read romance, I like mysteries, and I like thrillers, like psychological thrillers. And but I haven't really read any like horror. Like I haven't gotten into that genre, so I don't know if that
Mm.
reads more intense or not. But most of the ones I read have that ebb and flow. Even the psychological thrillers that can be very intense, like especially towards the end when everything's being revealed. That there is once you have a really big scene, then afterwards you get to just like pause for a little bit.
Yeah, it's definitely a delicate balance, and that's all part of when I think of storytelling, those are the kind of components that the choices that you have to make. Like, am I going to give my reader a break? How much do I need to unveil right now? What would make a bigger impact later? And that's why I can never, people, when I speak to authors, are like, "Oh, are you trying to write a book?" I'm like, "Absolutely not." Like, I just can't. That's just so much. It's a lot of work. And I don't feel like I've never had an idea so like calling out to me so strongly that I'm like, no, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna write a book. No, I'm good. I'm good on all that. I like doing this kind of stuff where I have the opportunity to just read a bunch of different things and then also talk to you guys about it, because I feel like though that's like taking it up a notch. Because like I said, like me, I'm here for the vibes, but then if there's things that I'm going to notice, but like how I said before, Good Hair Days, it's very character driven, and that's also a mood. That's also a different type of reader, and versus like action driven or plot driven. Like you have to tweak like your storytelling, your choices based on overall what are you trying to do?
Right.
So yeah, adding the romance in it, adding the heartfelt, like the you could if you couldn't tell, you could swear the fucking heartbreak in your book. Like I was like I was seriously like, 'cause it's slow pace, which is not like always a bad thing. It's like pace for the genre. And but it's very character driven because we're learning the characters and we're learning the story. We're learning the background of the generational, I don't want to say trauma because it's not necessarily trauma. It's definitely generational like pressure
Yeah.
because it's like all these, the whole lore, the whole Junie tradition. And then we see through the different generations of women and their relatives how much damage that's caused, like how much really like pressure and stress, and even on from a couple characters, their family members in particular, who were like they felt that and they made choices because of other characters feeling so strongly about certain things. And it's like part of the history, and you're using character point of views to clue the reader in as to what there's something more, and I wanna know now, but you gotta lead us into it. And it's all part of the big picture, and it's all in respect to your genre and your storytelling technique. There's so many components to it where if it were me, it would just if I did write a book, it would take me I'd be one of those authors, it would take me like 15 years and a lot of eyes, because I'm very patient, but I'm also very indecisive, and I'm a perfectionist,
Mhm.
and I might have there's some self-doubt, like, almost in everything, which contributes to the indecisiveness where I'm like and I think that's why, because whenever I read, like, different types of genres, whenever I think about it, or if I'm supposed to, like, rate and review, I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna rate a women's fiction different than I'm gonna rate, like, a dark romance or a
Right.
romance,"
Yeah.
and it's a lot of those things to think about, and that's why readers are like if anybody comes to me, they're like, "Book recommendation," I'm like, "What are you looking for?"
Right.
Because I'm gonna read the room. I'm not gonna recommend something to you that I know is not up your alley and things like that. Yeah, it's such a balancing act, and there's so many things I want to explore because there is the generational part of it, but then not only just with the pressure, but also just with some of the heartbreaking moments that happen and the pressure that Georgia feels and just how it comes down to who she is as a person, where she was like it's a lot of like self-blame and self-pressure because she's supposed to be the one that she feels like she's gotta live up to the fact that she wasn't named Junie and the reason behind that and the reason why, "Oh, you're off and doing these bigger and better things," and she's gotta put up a front. She's gotta keep the image up, and I'm just like, I felt for everyone because, like, Tina, as a reader, I'm like, "What are you still doing with that loser?"
Yeah.
As Cece, I'm like, I wanna be like, "Girl, chill out.
Yeah.
Girl, chill out." And then for Junie and Georgia, I loved their relationship and their friendship and just, like, all of your characters. I loved learning and meeting all of them, and also, I guess I'm the type of reader where I just wanna, like, shake the characters and be like, "What are you doing? What are you"
That should probably it's gonna be all readers wanna shake these characters at some point because they have and you're right, everything that you're saying about these family traditions and expectations and what the pressure that they either knowingly or unknowingly put on one another because a lot of the story too is about the expectations of your family, but also the way that we think that we're loving our family when maybe we're putting pressure on them
Mm.
or ways that the women think that this for so many generations they thought that naming the firstborn June and having this family beauty shop was the most wonderful thing, that then it's really in the current day when the book opens when it's Georgia and Junie where there are two girls and there's this push and pull of okay who's going to get the name and who's going to get the shop and if the person who's not getting the name what's going to happen for them, and it's all the waters are so muddied because their mother isn't there to speak for herself. So it's also partially especially about how when people die, we polish up their history, right? Like we forget, and this is part when you get to the end, you will understand more, but that we tend to remember the best things about people, which is natural, right? Like we shine up their flaws. And so for these two girls that are left with this kind of tricky family legacy, and both of them feeling caught in the middle where they want to please their family because they love them so much and they want to make them proud, but at the same time they feel pulled to be true to themselves as well. It's about unraveling all of that as well. And what we do, there's a lot of withholding the truth and maybe miscommunicating, and not miscommunicating so much, but like holding back the truth and their true feelings. And that, like, for example, Georgia, the main character, she doesn't want to go off and do this job or be bigger and better. She wants to be at home and running the shop, but she feels like she can't live that out or tell her family without hurting them. But it takes her the whole story to get to the end where she realizes, oh gosh, what they really want for me is to be happy. And maybe I was mistaken. Maybe if I had just been truthful. And there's a lot of this like half truths that go on amongst these women. And it's always done in the name of protecting one another. And it's when things
Yeah.
kind of start to fall apart, they really are forced to tell the truth and be honest. And that's where the real healing comes from.
Yeah, absolutely. Because even then, I'm thinking, like, as a reader, I'm like, oh, Georgia, you should have just said something like, what if I wanna, what if I don't wanna go off to bigger and better things? What if I wanna, like, chill or figure or stay here and be here with you guys and help out here in our town or take my time to find some things. But then again, at 17 or 18 or 19, she probably either she didn't that wasn't realistic as a perspective for her, or even if she said something, she would have still felt that pressure and reassurance like, "No, go fly out of this nest, go on to bigger and better things, go spread your wings." So, it totally makes sense for character growth and for just to make it as, like, authentic as possible for her to straight up be like, yeah, for several years,
Mhm.
she would be, like, trying her damnedest to live up to these expectations, and then she's hiding things and putting up a front until she realizes, like, when it's another they're facing another serious issue, and they're really leaning onto each other for support, that maybe that yeah, that it comes to a head where they finally feel that support, that affection, that understanding, that love, where it's just like they their family members feel almost a little bit of guilt for that they contributed to that feeling on Georgia. So it's to me, you could look at it this way, but then it's like realistically, no, Georgia would not have been there yet.
Right.
She was just either looking out for her sister or dealing with being the oldest sister with a mom who's passed.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it's like I felt for her so much. I'm not the oldest sister. My older sister, she's 10 years older from my mom's first marriage, and we have a decent we're not like estranged or anything, but we're not like we've got in phases of being close and whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but I totally like as being like we see that consistency of being the older daughter,
Yeah.
and then on top of that, having, like, your mom, the matriarch, has passed on, and then you just got the dad. We could tell he was, like you did a good job of kind of, um even though this is all about the women, you did a good job of kind of him not be forgotten,
Yeah.
like, he was, like you could tell he had a minute he needed a minute, figuratively speaking, to come back to himself and to come back to the world and to get used to living life without the love of his love and his partner, his person. And then I was just focused on Eddie. He was a little not like hopeless romantic, but we were like, "Come on, Eddie, you didn't blow it at least." But also we're immediately we understand it was George's fault.
Yeah.
And then poor Eddie was just unfortunately the casualty, so to speak, in her endeavors, and she acknowledges that's the thing, like, she's super self-aware, and that's why I was like I was rooting for them because I was like, "Talk to Eddie
Yeah.
because your side of it, you need to respect what you did to him, respect his experience, but also he understands, but you guys need to, like, just talk about it because I feel like that's all he needs. That's all he needs is to hear your side of it and for you to talk about it, and he's gonna be back to being your, like, crazy about you and wanting like, I felt like that's all that you just it was just, like, you just needed to crush that difficult, uncomfortable little patch of it,
Yeah.
and then it was gonna be like, "Okay, let's almost pick up where we started." It's just gonna be full-fledged waves of love after that because he was down bad, but he didn't like it. He didn't like it
Yeah.
that he was still because I feel like, yeah, it was one of the things where it's, "Oh, now they're back in town," and it's just all that comes flooding back, and then poor guy, he was, like, telling June, "No, this is a horrible idea. Don't make me do this."
And I loved some of
I
my
felt for him.
some of my favorite scenes to write were Junie and Eddie together, and, like, her being just herself, where she can be a little immature at times, and she, like, pokes and prods at him, and he was trying to do the best that he is caught in between. He wants to do what he can to help her and support her, but he also wants to be honest. He doesn't want to mislead anyone. And yeah, those were, and the banter between the two of them was really fun for me to write as well, because it really felt like brother and sister, especially as the story went on. The two of them in the same room were tons of fun to write.
They were yeah, it was adorable. It was so cute, and I think it allowed maybe you as a writer, but also just the readers to see what that type of relationship would look like, where there is history, but it's not like that type of history. And it's just there we see the side of Eddie that we're introduced to Eddie not as a romantic interest. He's just he's there as an honorary Louise or like a Louise on a dotted line. Just and so I just loved him. He was great and he was just the one who would it was hard for him to say no. Like he couldn't no to either of the sisters where he was just like,
Yeah.
ugh. Like, cause not only because it wasn't and she wasn't even using her diagnosis to guilt him. He made it very clear that I'm here for you. You should not be doing this by yourself. But then I also loved on the other side of that how Georgia gave him grief, like, talking about him in the 3rd person as if he's not in the room. "I don't think he needs to be here,"
Yeah.
because she had a little bit of grudge. It's like, he called it. He knew this was gonna happen.
Yeah, I know. I think he even says in the book, "I knew
I
exactly
loved
this
it.
was gonna happen." But it's yeah, Eddie was also just he was a
Yeah.
nice little antidote as well to some of the Louise sassiness that, like, he was more like he was level-headed and like you said, like, he wants to say yes to everyone, that he was like a good force to throw in among all the women.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was a fun not like a little bit of drama, like drama adjacent. It wasn't totally drama, but it was like drama adjacent where you throw a little messiness in there amongst like how you said, like just to lighten it up and to add a buffer to the serious things. It was emotional. I don't want to say it's like a content or trigger warning. It could be, but I feel you handled it in a way where it's not like
Yeah. There is an author's note that's gonna be in the so if somebody's reading an arc, a physical arc, it's not in there, but there is an author's note in the final copy that has the trigger warnings. Because I understand that, especially
uh,
with cancer, it's something that has affected either you or someone that you love for pretty much everyone, and so everybody's at a different point with that. And maybe if it's something they're going through right now, they don't want to read it, or if it's just something they're still figuring out. People are in all different types of situations. I just want people to be aware. And if they don't want to read the warning, that's also their choice.
exactly. No, I feel like that's definitely something that it's responsible because I got the ARC printed, but I think I saw, like, on your Instagram that you were, "Oh, hey, PSA," type of thing, if which is super helpful, and not like I get easily triggered, but I understand who, like, ARC readers, advanced copy readers might. But I also feel like by now they would understand what comes with the territory.
Yeah.
So just a couple more questions. You mentioned the fun part, writing the parts, but it's the relationship between Junie and Eddie. What were like the more challenging parts to write?
Mhm. So I think there are two main things in the most challenging category. One was just writing Junie's illness because Junie was probably one of my favorite characters. And so to write her going through something really devastating was tough just because, like, you fall in love with your characters and you spend so much time with them. And that was really challenging. And then the other thing that was really challenging was building the family history. Like I mentioned earlier, like my timeline stuff isn't always like the most tight. That writing the family history so that I was talking about the right person in the right generation. And there is in the final copy, there is going to be a family tree in the back section. But even though not that the story itself is like reliant on all of those details, but making sure that I had it correct and figuring out how. So Cece, who's one of the aunts, she has a point of view. There are three point of views in the story. Georgia, who's the main character, younger sister Junie, and then Cece. And Cece's point of view really serves the purpose, like you had hinted at earlier, of unveiling a lot of this family history and how did they get to where they are, which all happened before the girls were even alive, or most of it was, or they were very young when this stuff is happening. And so building that out in a way and including it in a way that gave the reader enough information so that they understood the story, and not only the story in terms of the nuts and bolts of who's who and what's happening, but also the degree of the kind of family traditions and how seriously it's taken and how much
Mm.
kind of emotion is put into it. Because really, we were talking about Georgia earlier and how she goes off and she's living this life she doesn't want, that it was important that and necessary too to make the family history and the depth of it very clear so that the weight of the expectations that were on her were also made clear. But doing that without it becoming too cumbersome or heavy or just like too much random. I didn't want it to feel like a random backstory. Like I wanted it to feel like enjoyable and part of the story, and that it helps to move it forward in terms of putting pieces of the puzzle together and including enough detail to make it clear without making it overly detailed and distracting and like, why are you telling me all of this? So those two were probably the most challenging parts.
Yeah, yeah, and it is again, it goes to back to storytelling. Maybe the more like intricate, the more complex and deep that you go, those challenges are gonna become a little bit more intense. No, absolutely. So something fun, this is I recently started asking authors because you're from the South and your characters is the setting is the South. So I imagine you're familiar with like Southern cooking and all that. Who would win in a hot wings challenge if you're familiar with that show, with the hot wings?
Oh my gosh.
Where they I got if Sean Evans, I think is his name. Yeah. So who between the four, Junie, Georgia, Cece, and Tina, who would win in a hot wings challenge?
Oh my gosh, that's such a great question. Part of me wants to say Tina because she's like the chef, even though she's a baker. But then part of me also wants to say Cece because like she's got some bite to her that I feel like she would not be shy with the seasoning. Maybe Tina would be a little bit too shy. Maybe hers would be a little bit too meek because that is her character. She starts out very meek and she does eventually find her voice, but I have to go with Cece. I have to go with Cece. That's a fun question.
I think I could see that too. Yeah, because 'cause I'm thinking about that when you get down to the characters and stuff, but, like, when stories are set in the South, I think that's a unique thing where it's like, there is something about Southern cooking, there's a thing about Southern attitude, but it's also funny because I think you're right. Because like, I'm thinking, like, Junie, she'd be like, "Nah, I'm good." Georgia would be like, "Why are we doing this?
Right.
Like, what is this?" Or she'd maybe find a way to, like, diplomatically step out of it, like, "Wait,
Yeah.
how about I just provide people with drinks and milk
Yes.
and, like, water," and but Cece, I could see her being like, "Oh, whatever, let's do this.
Yeah.
What are you guys talking about?" put your big girl panties on.
Yes. No, you've nailed it.
It's so fun. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we touched on this a little bit. What do you hope readers get out of Good Hair Days?
So, my hope is that they come out with, they're going to feel a lot of feelings, but I hope that they're reminded of the importance of their family relationships, whether that's found family or biological family, and the kind of hope that remains in life even when things get really tough. The fact that it's possible to find joy in difficult situations. Those are the things I really hope that they take away.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't quite know what to expect, or at least I would say I didn't expect to get so emotional towards the end, towards those last several chapters, because I was like, I should have seen it coming. This goes back to me thinking just going with the vibes and not necessarily foreshadowing, but I don't know why I didn't expect that outcome. Why, of course, it would happen this way. Of course, it would. When you could feel your face, you could feel the eyes, and you could feel it in your throat. I felt it in my throat and in my eyes when I closed the book. I was like, and I was like, what the fuck? I was like so angry. I was
I love it. I love it.
I just like I need a minute. The next book I read was like a holiday rom-com. I'm like, I need a palate cleanser after
Yes.
that. I need something fluffy and that you're expecting that happily ever after. You know what's gonna happen. Yeah, it was one of those where I was like, what the
Yeah.
fuck,
She's a
Grace?
whopper. Good Hair Days is a whopper. She is. She packs a big emotional
It is.
punch.
Yeah, yeah, which is I would that's honestly what made it as far as from the reader's perspective, that really like how you said, like how you feel. Like that really made this is gonna stick with me for a minute because of how it made me feel. So that was like definitely not just like the leading up to it, but that was like how it really drove it home. You're like, all right, get ready, guys.
Yeah,
It's like the last 6 or so chapters where everything's wrapping up. You're like, "Here we go, buckle up and
yeah,
get your tissues ready," because that was
yeah.
okay. So, Grace Helena Walz, what are you working on right now? What's your next project that you could talk about, if anything?
Yeah, so I have another women's fiction, Southern set women's fiction book that I'm working on. It is going to come out actually in the summer. There's not a finalized pub date yet, but it's called Pretty as a Peach, and it is about a mid-level marketing cosmetics company that comes to a suburban southern town and the havoc it wreaks on a group of friends. Less emotional heft than Good Hair Days, but it's been tons of fun to write. I'm really enjoying it. And that one I'm about to at some point get my copy edits back from. So I'll be back into fixing my timeline inevitably on that one. And probably after we finish getting Good Hair Days out into the world, I'll be sharing more about that online.
Oh, good, perfect. That's good to know because it does remind me of something when you I'm just like squirrel. It was just brings another thing that I thought about like in your book where it's just like the whole implication of cancer treatment and hair. Another thing I just I wanted to touch on real quick because it was like Junie was like, I'm gonna lose my hair. And Eddie was like, I know. Like he understood right. Like because that was such like that was so powerful. Like the family business. Like, the higher the hair, the closer to God. Make your hair look good with a capital G,
Mhm.
and take care of your hair at the very least. And for having that kind of illness run in the family, it was just almost it's like the irony of it, but it's
Yeah.
almost a little cruel, but it's almost just drives it that much more stronger, impactful, where it was there was definitely points where I got it hit me,
Mhm.
and that was one of them where Junie was like, "I'm gonna lose my hair." I just
And the
I
scene,
was like,
yeah.
"What did you do? Why did you do that?"
And in the original version, that wasn't in there. And my incredible editor was like, "Why haven't you said anything about this?" And I'm like, "Subconsciously, because I don't want to, because that's horrible." And she was like, "No, you need to go there." And like writing the scene, where Junie gets her hair cut, like I hated writing that because, like, I knew I loved Junie and I, like, didn't want that to happen, but that's what the story demanded, and I think that's one of the things that, like, Good Hair Days has really taught me as a writer is that stories take themselves where they want to go. And Good Hair Days, that the way that it turned out wasn't necessarily what I had planned for it when I first sat down to write. But I think it's a much stronger story than the first version that I wanted to write. But you're so right. Yes, the connection with the illness and the hair and how sacred hair is to these women, just it levels it up even more.
Oh gosh, I would yeah. It's kinda like your editor's sorry, not sorry, but this is how you're gonna do it. Like,
And that's what
it's
they
just
do. They see an opportunity and they say, "You need to take this and run with it. You're being shy. Push forward. Keep going."
yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. No, that was a very good choice and good, like, absolutely. It was a very good choice for you to listen because it definitely added to that emotional impact for sure. Cause I just, ugh, as someone obviously who like loves my hair, I have good hair. And I was just cause I think that has crossed my mind too, where I'm like, oh man, it would be a big deal if knock on wood, if I had to go through any sort of treatment like that. Cause that would be a big deal for someone like me because grown up knowing people like, "Oh, you have such good hair." It was a whole thing. Even when I was like a child, like 12 years old was the first time I cut my hair because I wanted to. I think I was like crossing that threshold until, oh, I'm another phase of my life. And my mom, she's okay, let's go like to the salon, blah, blah, blah. I just remember my dad was so upset. He
Oh,
was
no.
so upset. He was like, because we didn't tell him. We just went and did it.
Yeah.
It's something about men, 'cause even then with, like, my husband, if I go and chop like, I've donated my hair, like,
Yeah.
maybe every 4 years, 4 or 5 years or so, I'll go chop it. I go for trims, but I'll go ahead and chop it and donate it. And even when I go trim it, he's like, "You always cut too much off." I'm like, "Honey, like, it's gonna make it be healthy. It's gonna like, it's necessary to
Yeah.
take care of it." And he's no, I don't know what it is about men get so attached to it's so funny to me. But no, absolutely. That's one thing I think me as personal as a reader, someone who can relate to that on to an extent. I'm just that's probably why it hit me so bad. Okay, so Grace, where can we find you online and on social media?
Yes. So online, the social media I'm on most is Instagram. Grace Helena Books is my handle there. And then also I keep my website up to date, especially with events and stuff, like in-person events. And that's gracehelenawalz.com. Those are the best two places. I'm also on Facebook, but less frequently.
Perfect, perfect. So, Grace Helena Walz, A Good Hair Days, that comes out on November 11th. Grace, thank you so much for joining me today, for giving your authentic answers and rising to the challenge of some of my trickier questions and and letting me pick a bone with you about making me feel feelings. And if and when you are ready to talk about your next project, keep me in mind. I'd love to chat again.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was so fun and I appreciate your time. And let's definitely chat again about the next one. That'd be great.
And there you go. That was Grace Helena Walz talking about her book, Good Hair Days. That book is available now. Check out the show notes to see links where you can find Grace online and on social media and where to purchase the book. In the show notes, you'll also see where to find Cantina Book Club on your favorite social media book communities, such as Bookstagram, BookTok, BookTube, Threads, Facebook, and more. And I would love and appreciate it if you could hit that follow or subscribe button so that you never miss out on book reviews and author interviews. If you have any book loving friends who are looking to get more out of their reading lists, please share Katina Book Club with them so that they can find upcoming releases and interviews with authors. Another way to help this podcast is to head on over to your favorite podcast player and give Cantina Book Club a rating and review. It helps me reach more potential listeners and fellow book lovers like you. And that goes for any podcast that you listen to. It's one of the easiest things that you could do to help out. If you need book recommendations, and you could reach out to me, I'm always looking forward to sharing my recent favorites and chatting about them. You could also head on over to cantinabookclub.com to check more in-depth book reviews of all types of genres, While you're at it, you could subscribe by entering your email on the website so you could get new reviews and episode posts delivered directly to your inbox. If you want to support Cantina Book Club even more, you could donate by finding the form on cantinabookclub.com, whether it's a one-time donation or as little as $1 a month. I seriously appreciate the support and will share my appreciation by giving you a shout out on the show. And finally, one of the best ways to help authors promote their works is to head over to Amazon, Goodreads, Storygraph, BookBub, wherever you rate and review your books. Give a title that you like, a rating or review. It's free and it helps out the authors so much just to get their works out into the world and to reach more readers, other than straight up purchasing the book and sharing some love on social media. Thanks so much for listening and see you next time. Cheers.